welcome to Rock Book Show. Joining me today is Julia Crowe, who has written the most amazing book called My First Guitar. And Julia, I found out about your book actually at BEA, which is that one of the most crazy things on the face of the earth?
It was busy, crazy, a zoo.
It is a zoo. And for those of you who don't know, it's the Book Expo of America. I would say it's the biggest book fair that there is in the world, and it happens every May at the Javits Center in New York. And it's a great place for people like me and for people who love books to discover new books and new authors. And yours was one of the first ones that I dog-eared. And then, of course, we didn't get to meet there, but I heard that your book did really well and people were loving it. So I'm thrilled to talk to you today.
Same here. Thank you.
I want to talk to you first about the structure of the book because it's very interesting the way that you put it together. You talk to over 70 musicians, is that right?
Yeah, about 74.
Okay, and yet you've interwoven it with your own story as well. So tell everyone about how you came to put this all together.
Well, I was invited to a house concert party in New York several years ago, well, quite a while ago, by a classical guitar duo. And this apartment where the concert was held was huge. And I was searching room for my friends, and I happened to catch sight of the Captain Beefheart guitarist Gary Lucas tuning up his dobro inside a little girl's bedroom. And it was such a clash of a sight because this was a really frilly little girl's bedroom, and here Gary Lucas was dressed entirely in black and, with a big black broad brimmed hat. And he got up to shake my hand and introduce himself to me. And it struck me, where does anybody start playing the guitar? Because here was clearly a child's bedroom. I knew in a few years she would have rock posters on the wall, maybe a guitar standing in the corner. So I got to thinking about it, and I really wanted to start asking people how they got their start with the guitar.
And how long did it take you to put this together?
9 years.
Wow.
It was a slow process pretty much because I'm catching people off tour or when they're not recording. And many people wanted to take a break and they just weren't available. So, that's why it took as long as it did.
And you talk to people in so many different genres as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But did the musicians write their own stories, or did they tell you the story and then you put that together and edited it? How did that come together?
They would tell me their story, and it's difficult to be articulate all the time. I mean, very very few people are, unless you're like a radio host. But I would definitely take the prose and keep the integrity of the story and make people sound a little better than perhaps they did without the uhs like I'm doing right now. So it reads with the flow. So that's what I did, but I entirely kept their voice, kept their language, kept their words, and it's something that I'm good at doing.
Yeah, and what's beautiful too about the stories is it isn't just my first guitar was this Les Paul. You can hear in their voice the excitement of recalling that memory and telling you what else was going on in the world around them or in their life at that time.
Yeah, I love that part because I ordered the book. You asked me earlier how I ordered the book, and I did order it in terms of generational influences. So I started out with the older guitarists because they listened to the same music. They had different experiences as musicians than the younger musicians do. It was a very different approach. So I found that interesting, and I thought if I kept that in a progressive group and kept going younger, that would become more apparent.
And one of those older musicians was Dick Dale, and his story is one of the most memorable, I think, in the book.
Well, he's a larger-than-life, kind-hearted person. I can't begin to say what a big spirit he is. Just his love for the guitar, the exuberance. I guess that's the word I'm looking for, the exuberance. At first, he was reluctant to give an interview, and I completely understand. I identify with that so very much, just the caution one feels about giving an interview, especially for print. And I told him, look, this is going to be in your own words. This is you speaking. And once he opened up to that, you can see the exuberance just coming through the page. He was involved in so many things. He started out as a ukulele player first, and he worked so hard to buy his first ukulele, and it was a disappointment. So he worked hard again to get a better ukulele.
Mhm.
And the best part is that he helped develop the Fender Strat. He worked directly with Leo Fender to develop the Strat sound. And he tells wonderful stories about his friendships with Elvis and with Jimi Hendrix. And I can't have those people in the book because they're not with us anymore. So this is the way to bring those voices to life as well through him. So it's an incredible interview that he gave for the book.
It is. It's amazing. And it's one of the first ones I would read if you get Julia's book. Go to that one first. And it's so fascinating. Colonel Tom Parker's in there. I mean, the whole shebang. I love that he tells that Elvis called Priscilla Prissy. And it's just sitting in the closet reading Kung Fu books. It's fantastic. That's all I'm going to say. But this interview with Dick then folded into this great interview with Dave Alvin from the Blasters. And poor Dave had to wait for Dick to get off the phone with you.
About 3 hours, yeah. And that was so funny because I think Dave Alvin was very worried that I had forgotten. And I said, no, I'd just been on the phone with Dick Dale before. And the amazing thing, I didn't know this, but, Dave Alvin told me he grew up hearing Dick Dale's music from his own bedroom, streaming in when he was growing up, and that surf music was an influence for him. And he'd also met Dick Dale later, and of course he knew exactly why. I had a 3-hour phone call with him, and he was very happy about that. Actually, it was something that we both had a good laugh over because it made him feel good. It made Dave Alvin feel good to know that I had been on the phone with Dick Dale.
And you also have so many other great interviews in here. You talk with Albert Lee, you talk with Roger McGuinn and Peter Frampton and Tracy Guns and Johnny Lang. The Spinal Tap guys, Michael McKean and Christopher Guest, those are great stories.
Oh, I had to include them because we all love Spinal Tap, and they're good musicians as well. Michael McKean started out playing a folk guitar. Well, it was a nylon string guitar that he had that his father brought back to him from Mexico, and folk music was his primary interest. And he grew up in New York listening to the Who concerts from the rooftop across from the Fillmore. So he really has a great story about that. And then Chris Guest, interestingly, was self-taught on the guitar, but he was studying clarinet. So he had a formal musical education on the clarinet, but everything he learned on the guitar was pretty much ear. And he loved Doc Watson and bluegrass.
You also were lucky enough to get Jimmy Page in the book. And as you actually say, too, in the book, he is known to schedule an interview and then perhaps not make the interview. And you traveled all the way to London for this interview, but I'd love for you to share that story.
Yeah, well, it was a complete surprise. I had some friends who knew that I was working on this book, and they would tease me from time to time or call and pretend to be somebody that I knew they weren't because I could just hear right through it. But I received this email out of the blue saying that Jimmy Page would like to meet with you over a cup of coffee. And I thought, I'm onto this because Englishmen really aren't into coffee. So whoever you are, I'm not paying attention to this. I'm going back to work here. And then another email came in saying, well, are you coming out here or not? It was hugely generous of him to offer to give me some of his time. Sure enough, I did receive a call from his management saying he might not be able to meet you. I was told, to go to a coffee shop. Like, if the interview is going to happen, he'll be there. But if he can't make it, there will be a message waiting for you. And that immediately made me feel awkward because, again, being American, I know darn well if I walk into a coffee shop here in New York and ask, excuse me, is there a phone message waiting for me?
I thought that was the craziest thing.
And I did. I had to screw up the courage and walk into this coffee shop and say, you know what, I'm going to ask you this very weird question, but is there a phone message waiting for me? And I knew better than to say from Jimmy Page or also. But yeah, so, they said, they looked at me funny. I endured that humiliation. I was happy. It's like, how weird could that be? A girl walks into a coffee shop and seems really happy there's no phone message waiting for her. He showed up, we went in the coffee shop and we did the interview there. So that's how it's in the book.
You have to get the book to read that story. A great foreword in the book by Andy Summers. But again, the story of how that came to be and how you acquired the nickname the Huntress.
Oh, no. Well, it wasn't long after I got the idea that I wanted to do this book. There was a First World Guitar Congress in Towson, Maryland, and I figured I could interview a whole bunch of people in one fell swoop if I made it there, which I did. So, yes, I met Andy standing in line at a buffet, rather unbelievably, I guess, but that was my opportunity to introduce myself. And he was reluctant about doing the interview at first because he had his own book that he was working on, which is One Train Later, which is a beautifully written book. I completely recommend it. Most people think of guitarists as just being as good at one thing. And I have to tell you, so many of people in the book have other interests besides the guitar. I think that is in fact what makes them good guitarists. So Andy is very much into photography, and he's an excellent writer. I approached him again and I said, listen, I hope you can give me an interview for the book. I thought it wouldn't take away from his story at all, possibly, if he gave me just his first guitar story. He thought about it. He said yes, but then later I just felt I could see how much his own book meant to him, and I felt bad about that. So we came to an agreement that he would write the foreword. He would consider writing the foreword, which he did. It was very kind of him.
And how about you, Julia? Do you still have your first guitar?
No, I don't. I think it was sold at a garage sale when I was
Oh, my goodness.
That's okay. That gives it a second life somewhere out there in the universe to somebody else.
And what was your first guitar?
It was a no-name little piece of junk, really, with a warped neck. I mean, really, it was on its last legs when I got it. So, who knows what became of it.
And the cover of the book I love because that is such striking imagery of that lone guitar in the corner of a room.
The cover says it all. That book is, or the image is very enticing of that guitar. It has stories to tell, which, obviously they do. Everybody is telling a fantastic story about their guitar, their first guitar, even if it's a piece of junk. I mean, that's what's amazing about it.
There's still so much love in the voices of the people who tell those stories. Well, the book is My First Guitar, Tales of True Love and Lost Chords from 70 Legendary Musicians. And Julia, thank you so much for being with me today. I highly recommend the book. It's so enjoyable, and it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.